Everyone. Whew, it's good to see you all. You're here. I'm here. We'll just have a party. We'll just, let's do this. So I can remember when I was in my mid-20s, I went to my first concert. I had never really gone to a concert before, and I really hadn't had any interest, but then, I all of a sudden realized this was an area of growth for me. I could expand my palette, my horizons. And so in my mid-20s, I went to my first concert, and we chose this conference. My wife and I, chose this concert because we had heard this song on the radio. It was this beautiful forlorn love song that spoke deep to our souls and our hearts. And I can remember the title of the song was The First Day of My Life. And it was this song about this guy who had just met the woman he fell in love with and how from that point on, everything was beautiful and wonderful and the best thing ever. And so we're excited, we get tickets and we're getting ready and we walk in and we go to the concert venue. And when we walk in, I tend to notice, I'm looking around, this is my first one, I don't know what to expect, but when I walk in, I notice the audience for this concert is a little bit different than I had expected. I'm walking in and there's this younger, edgier, angstier crowd that's kind of milling about. And I thought, oh, maybe they were the concert before us. I don't know how these things work. Maybe they just cycle them through. I have no idea. And I can tell, I'm already starting to realize, I may not fit in with this group because, while they've got their angstier stuff going on, that's my time in life where I'm probably wearing a nice collared polo shirt. I ironed at that point in my life, so it was, it looked nice. I probably was wearing, some Doc Martens because that was my phase at that point, polo shirts and Doc Martens. And this was a crowd that they were decked out in their finest, dark and brooding ensembles, the black shirts that said, "Fight the man, anarchy is awesome, aha." And so I'm saying, these are not my people. They're lovely people, but they're not my people. And so again, first concert, I don't know what's going on here. And I say to myself, all right, we'll just sit down. I bet things will get, it'll all start to make sense. Let's just go sit down and find our seats. And we walk in. And did you know that they have concerts sometimes at places where there are no seats? I'm not kidding. I know some of you are well, then what's the point of living anymore? And I'm just telling you, there are concerts, why even listen to music if you can't sit down? That's all I'm saying. Why listen to music if you can't sit down? And yet, and so we go in there and all right, here's a place where we are gonna just stand, I guess. And so the group gathers around everybody and the music starts and I'm expecting, this beautiful, sweet, forlorn music, and instead they start I believe that what the term the kids use is thrashing, and it's very loud and it's very screamy, and nobody's falling in love with anybody in the middle of this song. I am befuddled and confused. And I realized later, apparently you should check out the whole catalog of a band's music because it may give you a little bit more of an idea and insight into what they sing. And so if I had gone back and looked at this whole catalog, I would have realized they play a far edgier, maybe angrier, harder music than I anticipated. Here's just some of the titles of the songs. Remember the first one, the one that I loved is First Day of My Life. We've fallen in love with a girl. Here are some other ones. Cremation. Poison. This one's poetic. A spindle, a darkness, a fever, and a necklace. And then what apparently is the opposite of what I won't ever be happy again. And this is their catalog. And I realized, I was misinformed of all of this. And so we're sitting there and I realized that they are singing songs of rebellion for the rebellious. And I am not rebellious. I drove an off-white Nissan Altima, like 4-door, sensible gas mileage. Like that's not rebellious at all. I like to go to bed at a decent time. Sun goes down, not light out, probably bedtime. I'll tell you, this is like, I enjoyed a good bowl of grape nuts at that point in my life. And if I really wanted on Saturday mornings, it was shredded wheat. So, live on the edge, my friends. And so I sat there and I realized that I am not supposed to be here. And I can recall my wife and I'm pretty sure we left early because it was so odd and so uncomfortable. And I felt like I was standing out and this was not the place for me. I didn't belong here. And we've gone to other concerts since then, but that one just sticks out in my mind because I remember how weird it felt and how uncomfortable it felt. And you know what? I share this today because we're ending our series, Follow Jesus. And as followers of Jesus, we seek to act like, think like, talk like, walk like, speak like, essentially live our lives like Jesus. And one of the things that Jesus was renowned for, one of the things that he spent all of his time doing was finding those people that felt like they didn't belong, that looked at religion and said, I don't belong there. I don't belong with that group. And he invited them into his way. And he said, I've got a place for you to belong. It's with me. It's with my people, with my church. And he saw these people, he was able to see them and say, come follow me because you belong with me and with us. And so throughout the Gospels, we see him do this. We see him invite people into this new way of being, this new movement. And then over and over again, he doesn't just invite them into it, but he actually paints picture after picture after picture after picture of what it looks like to live in that place, to do his new way of being, to walk after him. And the Gospel of Matthew, where we're going to be today, it actually has one of the most detailed pictures that we'll find of all this because it tells us about this moment where Jesus takes his disciples and he goes up on a hillside and he's now surrounded by this large group of people. He's got his disciples, but he's also got groups of people from all over the place that have gathered around. And it's a crowd of people who essentially have been made up of people who have said, I don't feel like I belong in the religion of that's surrounding me during that time. I don't feel like I belong here or there. And yet they hear this guy, Jesus, proclaiming this new kingdom that says you belong with God. And see, these are the people who had encountered this religious system that existed for those who lived within it. And as a result, it had no space for the people in the world around it. And so he sits on this hillside and he goes through the Sermon on the Mount and he unpacks this different vision of what religion is supposed to be, of who the people of God are supposed to be. And it's the calling of what we as a church are meant to be. We as followers of Christ are meant to be, because what he unpacks essentially is this, and this is the thing we want to keep in the back of our minds all morning, is what he unpacks is that the church does not exist just for us. Because we are the church, and as the church, it exists for the world around us. That's what he was calling people to be, to step into something that wasn't just for them, but was something where they found belonging, found a place, but then realized that they were to share that with the people that they encountered. And so Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, he speaks to this, and he says, where are we? Verse 13, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. And then he says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And again, I don't want us to miss something here. But perhaps the first thing that's going to help us step into this exploration today is he is doing this on the side of a hill. He is not at a temple, at a synagogue, or some other religious setting. He's just on the side of a hill where anybody can come and see it. And what this tells us is that Jesus is, in this moment, he's teaching a message that is subversive, that is revolutionary, that is turning things upside down, because he is constantly reminding these people that this system, I'm comparing this system that's supposed to be working, but it's not, this religious system that's supposed to be working, it's like salt that is not salty, which is a conundrum. Do you know what salt that is not salty is? Not salt. And he is saying this thing is presenting itself as what it's supposed to be, but it's not. It's not living up to what it's meant to be. Because religion was supposed to be about building bridges to help people draw closer to God, and instead it was building up walls that served to keep people out. Religion was supposed to be about expanding the kingdom of God for anybody who wanted to come and encounter God's love and grace and mercy. And instead, it seemed to be narrowing it down to the select few who wanted to keep God's rules and regulations. And so religion became a religion for the religious, a religion that's for us and not for them. And Jesus said, no, that's not my way. And you see, friends, I think down deep in our bones, deep in our souls, we know that that's not what religion is supposed to be. We're convinced of that. That's why we're all here today. And we all know that that's not what church is supposed to be. The people of God, those who follow Jesus, we know that's not what it's supposed to be. Because we've all stepped into something and realized that Jesus is saying, following me leads to something different. Following me creates a different experience. And so in the passage that we just read, what Jesus does is he lays out some of the specifics, some uniqueness of what it means to follow him. And how do we engage with each other in the world around us? And he lays it out with this imagery of salt and light. And so this morning, I just want to take some time to discover what does it mean as we unpack this to look like both as individuals and as the church community to be salt and light in the lives of the people around us and in the greater community around us. And so we'll just navigate through that, and at the end, we're gonna hopefully walk away creating space and a place that says, come join us, as opposed to watch from the outside. So, going back to 5:13. There it is. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. So we talked about how he's comparing it, talking about this system that doesn't work. But my favorite part of all this, the thing that I love about this, is that Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. He doesn't say, I want you to be kind of like the salt. I want you to, be salt adjacent. I want you to try your hardest to resemble salt in some poor imitation. No, he simply says, look, you're my people, you're my followers. Guess what that means? You are the salt of the earth. And here's the thing about salt. They would have known it, we know it. It's become something that people know throughout time, is that there's not just one use for salt, is there? There's not just one thing that it does. You can use it in multiple different ways, and each one does something a little bit different, brings out something a little bit different, which means that that's good news for us, because we as a group of people who are all different and at different spaces in life, we can live out this call to be salt in different ways. So we'll just take a glimpse at a couple things of what does it mean then? What are some ways that we can live out who we are as salt? And the first one is the idea that salt, it actually brings some flavor out, right? Salt, when it's used properly, brings flavor out of what we're eating, what we're tasting. It brings flavor into the world. It's a unique thing. Have you ever looked up how many different types of salts there are? The other day, if you've ever looked in your spice cabinet, the other day I was looking at my spice cabinet, arranging some stuff, and I have like 5 different types of salts sitting in my spice cabinet. And I realized this is fascinating, because there are all these different types of salts that do all these different types of things. You have table salt, you have kosher salt, you have sea salt. You also have Hawaiian black lava salt, but then you can also get Hawaiian red salt. And they do 2 different things. I don't know what, but they do. You also have Himalayan pink salt, Himalayan black flake truffle salt. And then we could go on and on. There's a long list. Google it. It takes a while. But you're going to just have to trust me on this, in that there's all these different types of things. And if you start reading about them, each one of these does something a little bit different, has a different flavor, has a little tweak, whatever it may be. And each one of these, they bring out a different element. And I think when Jesus says, you know what, you're to be salt of the earth, you are salt, one of the things he's asking us to realize about ourselves is that there is a unique thing about ourselves that can bring out a unique flavor of who God is. That each of us have this uniqueness, these gifts and skills and things about us that make us up, that bring out this unique flavor to who God is, which then lets people see the uniqueness of God and they can start to step into that. You know, this past week, there was a middle school musical at my son's school, and we went and we watched it, and it was wonderful to go and watch, and it was awesome to see all these kids, including my son, be a part of it. And so it's Oz the musical. And there's something I learned about this is that Dorothy, you know, the main character Dorothy, she had an understudy. And it hit me that, you know, that's probably wise because, you know, if Dorothy gets sick, you can't have Oz the musical. It just doesn't, you know, Toto is not a good lead. Toto doesn't really carry the show. And so you've got to have an understudy. And so this understudy, we learned this understudy had to go to all the rehearsals, had to learn all the songs, all the lines, had to do all the hard work. But unlike, you know, a Broadway show where, you know, it's going to run for months on end, this is, you know, the middle school musical, so it's going to go for 2 nights. And so the chances are highly likely that, you know, the lead, you know, Dorothy is going to be there both nights. And lo and behold, she was. And you would think that, you know, this would be something that would be discouraging. This would be a disappointment to this poor understudy because they put in all this work and now they're not going to be able to get up front and perform in front of all, you know, use these skills that they have in front of their family and their friends. And so we're sitting there at this musical, and it's been a wonderful time so far, and it's the act 1 has just ended, the curtain comes down, and the director comes up, and she says, you know, before we go into act 2, we've got a moment here, special moment. And she goes on to tell about how the person who had started the musical theater program at the school had been her mentor and kind of drawn her into being a part of this, and had just as a teacher been a mentor to her as they were both history teachers, and he was a history teacher there as well, and all the students loved him, and he seemed to be like this really great and wonderful teacher. And he had retired just recently. And then she starts to share and get really emotional that, you know, he had passed away very surprisingly, very recently. And she said, and so we want to have a moment. And none of us were expecting this. We were all sitting there thinking, we're just going to get to be able to see the second half of this musical and see how this ends. And, you know, I won't spoil it for you if you haven't read Oz, because just ruby slippers, they're awesome. But this unique thing happens, and she says, we're gonna have a moment, because we want to take a moment to honor and remember this teacher. And out from behind the curtain comes the understudy, and she's carrying a guitar, and she sits down, and she starts playing one of the most beautiful renditions of Somewhere Over the Rainbow I had ever heard. This 7th or 8th grade girl strumming along, and it's to honor this teacher. And a screen comes down and they start showing all these pictures of this teacher as he's engaging with the students and the fellow teachers in musical theater. And here's the thing. I guarantee you half of us in that audience didn't know him at all. And yet the way this young lady leveraged her gifts, it drew us in. I'd never met the guy, never heard of him before. And I felt myself being involved and pulled in, just feeling, you know, celebrating who he was, grieving with this community around me that they had lost somebody. And we didn't expect this at all, and yet here we are pulled into this. And the beautiful thing about Jesus calling us to be salt is that he's calling us to be who he created us to be, to step into the moments that present themselves, into the lives that are in front of us. He says that we each have a beautiful song and that somebody in this world needs it. Each of us has a song to sing, and somebody in this world needs to hear that song. And so, if I were to ask you, what's the thing that you can bring to this world that is just you? What is the unique kind of salt that you are? You know, a lot of us have some uniquenesses in our personalities. There are many of you who are extroverts. When I say you people, I mean you people, not me. But you extroverts, the world needs you because you like to greet new people and you like to make connections and you love to bring people into everything. You know what? I'm an introvert. You know how many friends introverts need? One. Really good friend, and then we'll have some acquaintances that we see every 4 or 5 years, and that's sometimes too soon. I got my friend I made in high school. We've stuck together. We're good. I have no space. I have no bandwidth. I don't need any more Christmas card addresses. But you extroverts, you're a great blessing to us because you remind us that, people getting to know more than one person is amazing and that they all have these unique things and they're beautiful to get to know. And you're great at meeting them and making them feel drawn in and connecting the rest of us. But you know what else? You guys talk a lot. And so here's the deal, everyone. The world needs introverts like us as well because sometimes we just don't talk. And we like to give space. And we'd rather listen. And we'd like to draw people in, and we want to give people space to really share who they are. And it doesn't mean you extroverts don't, but it just means that we do it, not quite as often as you all. And so the world needs people with different personalities, it also needs people who have different interests. We have a bike group here. I don't bike. Last time I tried to bike, I fell off of one. And so I really feel like it's not for me anymore. And so I don't bike, but I know we've got a couple different bike groups here at church that do mountain biking and road biking. And I can't tell you how many times I hear stories of like, hey, I know this guy who just joined the bike group and he didn't come here. He found out we like to bike. And so we all bike together. And next thing you know, he's asking us about Jesus and he's coming to church. And it's this amazing moment. And it's because somebody had a unique interest and they stepped out and they leverage that in a way. Here's the thing. When you bring who you are, and each and every one of us have so many unique things about who we are, but when you bring who you are, when you bring that special flavor, that special song, it starts to show a person that they have a place. That the religion is not just for the religious, but it's for anyone who wants to step in and encounter God. And that they can be a part of this kingdom in this new way that Jesus is calling us all to. You can show the person that says, I have no place, that's not true. You have a place right here with us. You have a place right here with Christ. Because when you're being salt out of who you are, you're showing people that they can belong. The other thing, when we think about salt, one of the things that I think of most commonly when it comes to salt is just how thirsty salt makes you. You ever had an over-salted dish, or you eat some of those saltine crackers and it just drains all the moisture from your mouth and you're now sitting there being like, I could use a 5-gallon jug of ice water. And you see, I love that concept, that picture, because when I think when Jesus is talking about salt, he's also talking about, are you going to be able to create a thirst for me in other people's lives? Are you going to be able to create a longing and a thirst for my kingdom and this community in other people's lives? And you know what? Creating thirst, the best way we do that is we start to create hope. We start to create encouragement. And if we can start speaking that into people's lives, they start to get a little bit more thirsty, a little bit more parched, and say, I want more of that. Now, I can think of times people will discover I'm a pastor as I go out and I meet people and make friends and get to know them a little bit. And as they discover I'm a pastor, it doesn't take them long to start telling me about their own religious experiences, how they, what their church experiences, their spiritual experiences, their religious experiences. And a lot of them have positive experience. They tell me about, how they grew up in church and they love their church that they go to and they love all the things that are going on and they have this beautiful relationship with God. But then there are a lot of them who will tell me, I gotta be honest, I struggle with church. I struggle with God. I struggle with Christians. And they'll tell me their stories and they're always, some story kind of along this line. Some will tell me about how they've sat in a worship service that's all about the love of Jesus and treating each other kindly with love and compassion and following after this Jesus. And they're in this worship service with all these people. And then when they go out to the parking lot to leave, these very same people are the ones yelling and swearing and honking and, just being angry all the time because they can't get to Golden Corral when they want to. And it didn't match up for them. And they said, I don't understand what's the point of doing this if everyone's just gonna, not live out of what Jesus is supposed to be? If they're just gonna sit and listen and then behave in the opposite, what's the point of going? I don't wanna be a part of that. And it doesn't leave a thirst, it actually leaves a taste of bitterness. I had other people tell me, one person recently told me how they went to religious schools growing up, and the adults who were the teachers and the administrators in those schools were supposed to be these people who are supposed to be the representatives of who Jesus is, the representatives of Jesus who says, let the little children come to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to those folks. And they tell me about how those adults, instead of being that type of person, they were the type of person that were cruel and cold, and they taught that a person's worth was in how well could they keep the rules, how well could they follow a commandment. And those adults, their main motivator for pushing people was punishment and consequences rather than compassion and care. And they said, if that's Jesus, I don't want anything to do with it. And it left them bitter as opposed to thirsty. And people have shared all different, they've walked into a church and they've gotten to know Christians, and they felt like, okay, I can be a part of this as long as I'm changing to who they want me to be. I need to change how I think, what I believe. I need to change this or that about me. And there's some sort of agenda where you're not fully in until you're fully like us. I said, I don't understand that. And each of these people walked away discouraged and lacking hope. And what Jesus says is, if you're going to be salt, and you are salt, create a thirst by giving hope and giving encouragement. I bet all of us, if we thought about it, probably have some people in our lives that would share those same experiences. I bet if I asked you to, I said, picture somebody in your life that has walked away and has struggled and had some discouragement and hopelessness when it comes to religion, when it comes to Christianity, you could get that picture. As you picture that person, let me ask you this then. What kind of encouragement and hope giving can you do to help restore that? How can you help restore some of that hope? Maybe it's just showing them, you know what, that the people that love Jesus, that follow Jesus, the people that are salt, they're actually kind and compassionate and grace-filled and forgiving, not just on Sundays, but actually throughout the whole week. Or show them and remind them and keep telling them over and over that their worth isn't wrapped up in how well they can keep a commandment or a rule, but rather that they're this unique creation made in the image of God. Is there somebody in your life that needs to hear that? Is that going to fill somebody with hope? If so, be salt to them. You know, one of the things that I know in our day and age, because of just the way technology has gotten, is that social media makes this really, really hard. Because it's easy on social media to not be encouraging and hope-giving, but actually to be argumentative. Am I right? It's easy to slip into arguing points, especially when it comes to religion, about theological points, doctrinal points, ideological points, and go back and forth and simply try and point out the errors of another person's thinking. But you know, at the same time, you know what that doesn't create is a big thirst for God. And so, what would it look like to bring and give hope and encouragement as opposed to arguing a point? Because when we start to bring this hope and encouragement to people, what we start to do is help them see that there is a place for them. And it's in this new kingdom, this new way of being that Jesus has called us to. So let's be salt and start showing those people, start showing the world around us that they have a place with us as the church and with Jesus as they follow him. The other thing here, though, is that Jesus doesn't just tell us we're salt, but he also says, you know what? You are a light. You remember he says, you are a light of the world, the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. When we get a flashlight, when we walk through our house sometimes at night, or we get a flashlight and we need to show it, what does that do? It illuminates the area up and shows us what's truly there, right? Light shows the fullness and truth of what something is. People need to be invited to see an accurate picture of who God is. There are those who we encounter that have had encounters with others, who have had encounters with religion and with the church, and they've gotten a twisted and deformed view of who God is. And sometimes our biggest task is to help bring that clear picture. You know, I can't tell you how many people I meet, and you probably know the same type of folks who look at God and they picture him as a bully, as a control freak, as somebody who requires all this rule following. And they say, that's not for us. We can't live up to that. But when we actually step into being lights, we can show people who God truly is. I have a story. My gym, I coach and train at a gym here in town, and the owner of the gym captured this for me, just blew me away this past couple weeks with this idea. And so we have just recently joined our gym, an 18-year-old young man. Goes to Flowing Wells High School. 18-year-old young man joined our gym. And most of us are, 40s and stuff like that. So, he's hanging out with some older folks. We don't run in the same crowds, but this is 18-year-old kid, and it's awesome to have him there. And our gym owner found out that he's part of the Flowing Wells band. He apparently rocks the electric guitar like nobody's business. And so he's part of the Flowing Wells band. And in a couple weeks, on a Wednesday night, they're gonna have their band concert. And so she sat there, and here's what she did. She said, you know what? Because we have classes in the mornings, and then we have classes every evening. And she said, on that Wednesday night, we're not going to have classes. We're going to close the gym. And as many of us as possible are going to go down to Flowing Wells, and we're going to sit in the audience, and we're going to cheer this kid on. And we're going to show up just to be there for him. And I thought that was the most amazing thing. Can you imagine this? And I actually got to announce, it's on the announcement board. And so this young man was in my class, in my evening class, when we first started announcing this. And I said, our friend over there told, you play a mean guitar, you shred some faces off every now and then. And so we hear you got a concert going off. So we're canceling, we're not having classes these nights, and we're going to go visit, and we're going to actually go to the concert. And he looked and he said, what? You're serious? And all of a sudden, this young man is having this group of people that are coming around him and showing up to where he's at, and they're saying, you know what? You're more than just somebody who comes and works out with us. You are a part of this community. You're a part of something that we want to just celebrate and rally around. And I thought, that is light. That's what the church is supposed to be. Isn't it? Where we can show up to people and say, we want to rally around you. We want to show you that God loves that you have these skills, that you are not just a nameless face, a customer or anything like that, but you are a person that we want to be deeply involved in. We want to show that. And so what does it mean for us to be light in the lives, to paint a different picture of who God is? Is there somebody in your life where you could picture a face and you say, man, they've got a view of God that just has been twisted and distorted, and it's hurting them, and they could just see the beauty of this? Do you have that person? One of the things I've encountered is that there are really three things predominantly in my experience that really impact how one person sees God. And one of them is the idea of forgiveness. People struggle with that. God could possibly forgive me. That things I've done aren't so bad that he would forgive me. And you know what? There are people that if we were going to shine a light in their lives, we would just be forgiving and loving to them. They just need to feel some forgiveness from people who love Jesus. Or the other is patience. How easy is it to be impatient with people? And if we wanted to shine a light and show people who God was, we become a people and live out of this, that we're going to be patient with who you are. We're going to not lose our patience at a moment's notice. Or acceptance. People sit there and say, I can't step foot through those doors because I haven't changed who I am yet. I've got to be a certain way before this God lets me in. And we get to sit there and say, no. You're with us. Be with us. As you are. Come discover a God who loves you as you are, loves who you are, made you who you are. Come be with us and learn what it means to walk with him, to be who you fully are and discover who you fully are. And when we do this, when we bring this true view and beauty of God to light, we show people that they belong. Now I want to just end with this. So we've done salt, we've done light. And I know a lot of us, if you've been in church for a while, you've probably heard lots of sermons on salt, breaking down all the different ways salt is done, just like we've done today, and same with light. I know I've given some of those. But really, sometimes it's just important. We've done that and it's important. But it's also, I just want to encourage us to step back. Because it's easy to say, okay, how am I going to do this? Who am I going to do this with? Where am I going to go? How do I do all this? And it's a simple thing sometimes. And it's just be salty. Be light. Jesus is saying, don't get caught up too much in this. You are salt. Be salty. You'll figure it out. You'll go through some bumps and some trials, but you'll get there. And I understand that this is hard sometimes to start stepping into this and really opening up and engaging with people and inviting them in and doing all these sorts of things. I know that there are some people who can go to Home Depot for a can of paint and they come home with 5 new best friends and like a pickleball partner for Saturday mornings for life. Like they're just those people. I'm not one of those people, as you may have picked up on. But I understand that even if I'm not, like, this is something that's too important not to start sharing, not to start inviting people into. And so I try my hardest. And this is one of the things where I can remember when I was younger and I was really stepping in this and trying hard. And it wasn't always pretty. When my wife and I lived in an apartment complex when we were first married because we were saving up for a house. And I was down in the gym. It was a Saturday night and I was down in the fitness center. And it was me and this other guy, and we were watching football on the TV and working out. And as a church and a staff, we had been talking about this idea of, being light, salt, bringing people in, sharing who God truly is with them. And I've got this guy here. And I'm like, oh, okay, this could be it. This might be the moment. And so we're watching football, and we start talking about the football game, and we get on this conversation. And the guy shares with me that he's just moved to Tucson because he's going to walk on to the U of A football team. I thought that was awesome. And so he's telling me how he's just moved here, and so he's training really hard, and he doesn't really know many people because he's moved from out of town, and he's just been focusing on this, so still doesn't really know anybody. And I'm like, this is going to be awesome. This guy doesn't know. He's got a new best friend. And so we start talking some more, and I said, well, tell me, what is it like to train to have to train to be on a football team? Because I don't know if you noticed, but I do not look like a football player. I am not strong or fast. And so we're sitting there and he's explaining, he does his weight training and his strength training. And he also talks about doing agility training where he dances around cones and stuff. By the way, that's agility, if you all were curious. You just witnessed some amazing agility. And then he was telling me, and speed training, because you got to be fast, you got to be strong, you got to be fast. And I was like, oh, how do you do that? Because I'm very slow, and that would be awesome to be fast. And he tells me about, you run a lot. But he also told me about, he had this, I don't know if you've seen him, I have a picture just because it's hard to describe him. But there's this harness, and there's this parachute sticking out the back, and you run as fast as you can, and the parachute drags, and so it teaches you to just build up your speed and your strength. And I am sitting there and I am all into this. And I'm like, okay, this guy's gonna be a part of my life forever. And I gotta close that deal. And so I sit there and I realize, and I'm gonna, this is where we're gonna connect. And I say, you know what, man, that's awesome. If you ever need somebody to hold your parachute for you, I'd love to. I don't even know what that means. And I just want you to pause for a minute and imagine a stranger in a gym saying, I'd love to hold your parachute. And everything kind of changed. And he kind of starts moving back. And I was like, oh, but wait, you want to swap numbers? So, if we need to, we can meet up. And he's like, yeah, 5, 2, and he just left. And every time I saw him in the complex, all I would see was him running. And I realized, man, this is rough. And I was discouraged for a while. I was like, maybe I'm just not meant to do this sort of thing. Maybe I'm just meant to be the guy that's not trying to pull people in, because I don't do a very good job and I tend to push them away. And maybe even if you're not pushing people away, it's just tough. But I want to tell you, it's something I've worked on. It's something I've tried to stick to. And I want to encourage you on that, because this is such an important thing. For people to experience and understand a God who wants them there. There's no more beautiful thing than we can do as a church. Because we are a place for people to belong. We follow a Jesus who says, come with me. And so my deepest desire and his hope is that no matter how we navigate it, we can be the salt and the light that says, here is who God is. Here is encouragement and hope. Come join us with who you are. And we get to start seeing the church grow and the people around us grow and encounter God in a brand new way. So may all of us constantly be discovering what it means to be salt and to be light. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for the call to follow you and the gift that we have to be able to be a part of this. We ask that you help us discover those moments and the people in our lives that just need us stepping into it because they need to encounter you. We thank you for the love you have for them and the love you have for us. In your name, amen. All right, so if you are looking for prayer today, if you love to pray with people or needing some prayer, we've got our prayer place right over there and some wonderful folks who would love to pray with you. If you are new with us or have only been joining us very recently, I'd love to meet you. I know some of our other folks who have been up on stage would love to meet you as well. We'll be right over there with, again, some of our wonderful volunteers, right under that gazebo-looking thing just to say hey. So glad you all are here. So glad to see you this morning. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see all of you next Sunday.